conversation we are planning to have here. So, like, just as we understand the whole digital lending space, it has been growing tremendously within US as well as India and other emerging markets. And the recent Square's announcement of acquisition of Afterpay for $29 billion was pretty amazing, and that's what like ring us a bell that hey, this is a kind of a session which we should talk about. And when we talk about digital lending, like COVID-19 has anyways like further and given a paradigm shift in India's digital payment space and the spending habits of Indian millennial consumers, where they want like more sort of credit options, and as a result, the whole lending tech industry has also found a lot of credit gaps in the past couple of years. And that's where they are planning, like coming up with all sorts of innovative products and pushing the whole millennials and Gen Zs towards like more better ways of consumer spending as well as managing their finances. And that's where like we thought let's bring up some sort of an amazing speakers. So I, without further ado, I would like to now welcome all our speakers, Mr. Pavitra Walvekar, who is the co-founder and CEO at Kudos, Mr. Mikhil Inani, who is the MD and CEO of Apollo Finvest, Mr. Harshit Jain, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Zest Money, and Mr. Argya Bhattacharya, who is VP Partnerships and Alliances at Signsy. So I would like to hand over my mic to Mr. Argya. And if you could introduce yourself, Argya, first, and then take over the panel conversation ahead, that would be amazing.
Perfect. Thank you, Sumit, for setting up the context. Hi, everyone. Greetings, my fellow panelists. Sumit, thank you for setting up the context in terms of, I think, a lot of attention that this space is getting, and also the phenomenal growth that we are seeing in this segment at this point in time. What we'll try to do is over the next 30 minutes or so, try and pose my fellow panelists a few questions. I will try to keep it simple, insightful, and at times maybe ask questions which might kind of bring up a debate, right? So we'll try and keep it as free-flowing as possible. And the way we're going to run it is, Pavitra, maybe we'll start with you, if that's okay with you. I'll shoot the first question, and we'll try and get a view from both Harshit and Mikhil as well, so that we get a diverse view of on the single topic, and then we kind of move on from there. So Pavitra, Harshit, and Mikhil, if that's okay, we'll get started.
Sure. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So Pavitra, Sumit already mentioned, right? The BNPL space is kind of booming now post-COVID. And, there are a couple of factors that are being kind of highlighted. One, the consumer spending online because everyone's at home doing online shopping. A contrary or a contradicting factor that we are also hearing is, there are job losses and people are losing money. And BNPL is actually a way of funding the short term and making the spend pretty predictable. So as you see it, how do you see the growth of the BNPL segment? And not only during COVID, as you kind of get out of the pandemic, how do you see the space evolving going forward?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, hey, thanks. It's a real pleasure to be on this platform. So as for this question, I think let's just back up 1 second. And I feel like, first of all, like, I don't think buy now, pay later is a new phenomenon, right? It has existed. I mean, the first one to do it at scale actually was Bajaj Finance, right? Like, do you remember when we used to go to a Chroma store and then you try to buy a TV and then you could just do it at a no-cost EMI? So I feel like there are two types of buy now, pay laters in general, just to carve out like, the lay of the landscape. One is obviously the low-cost option, and the other is a no-cost EMI option, right? And in the low-cost, it's obviously the customer who's bearing is paying for the charges. It's usually much less than a credit card. And the other option is where the customer bears no cost. It's the merchant that is paying for that fee, right? I feel like it's grown in the last year or so, obviously because of the technology adoption that COVID has fast forwarded all of this adoption. But I feel like part of the reason why it's grown is these two factors, which is one obviously is the technology adoption curve, and the other is the convenience of it, right? Which customers gain at the point of sale itself. Buy now, pay later is like a seamless journey because we've gone through, it's almost like a better option than a credit card. It's because it's cheaper, and it's more seamless than a credit card too. There are no two-factor authentication. It's literally on the fly. you're getting a credit option. And it's two sides of customers, right? On the one hand, you have customers who actually have a credit card, but they still use this option. And the only reason they use it is because of the convenience of it. It is so seamless at the point of sale. And the other option is the other set of customers who are new to credit. They don't have any credit as yet, but now because you can underwrite them on the fly with just simply an Aadhaar card, within 5 seconds, you can make a credit available to them. Now, all of a sudden, you're bringing a new set of customers into the fold that can actually use this service, right? So I feel like to allude to your question that, this is just like the lay of the landscape. It's a phenomenal product. It's been around for a while, and it has many growth. It has many options and a lot of growth trajectory coming up for it in the time to come.
Perfect. Nikhil, let's move on to you. Same question. Let's hear your views, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to me, I think it's pretty simple. I think fundamentally, credit cards just don't exist in India, right? It's like very similar to, in a way, how basically 4G came in, and, before that, basically 3G was almost like non-existent, right? India's like a leapfrogging country, right? We kind of tend to leapfrog things, and that's what happened with credit cards. I mean, credit cards is basically like 60-70 million odd credit cards in India today. Obviously, companies like Slice, etc., are really pushing and trying to up the adoption curve. But I think broadly speaking, right, I think BNPL today, from a customer perspective, in many ways, for a large set of customers, like 90% plus of India, this is really the only option, right? Coupled with the fact of COVID pushing people online to basically do shopping, it's almost like, I mean, to me, it's not even a surprise that it's picked up, right? Because, I mean, there is really no other option, right? Like if you put the person at the checkout and he doesn't have the money to pay for the entire thing, what's he going to do? And obviously players like Zest who are coming in, bringing in a lot more people to essentially, get this option, right? Like, as Pavitra basically mentioned, Bajaj Finserv used to do this before, but obviously they have a very, very tight funnel of people that they basically approve. But, companies like Zest who are coming in right now, they're using their algorithms, they're enabling a lot more people to get essentially this option of, an affordable way to pay for the product, right? So it's increasing the top of the funnel. And, that's pretty much, the story so far of, BNPL and why it's basically taken off, right now.
And Nikhil, just to kind of nudge a little more on that, right? So I guess in the current scenario, of course, it's making sense. How do you see this trend evolving going forward? Let's say we're out of the pandemic, everybody's out and about. And of course, the accessibility of credit cards remain what it is, right? How do you see the trend kind of growing from here on?
I think it'll continue, right? I don't think, by the way, in my opinion, at least, I don't think this is something which is going to be a flash in the pan, right? I don't think it's something, why now? I think it's a combination of basically, COVID and essentially the technology being present to do digital loans, right? Like a lot of people ask questions like, why is digital lending taking off now? Why not 5 years ago? Just, technology, right? Like there was no way to do eKYC. There were no digital loan agreements. There was no, seamless way to basically do this stuff online before, right? Like now it is present. And again, with so many companies entering this BNPL space, it's going to be present in right from, companies like Amazon, Flipkart, which are the majority, to the massive long tail as well, right? Companies like Sezzle, companies like, Simple, PayUs, all of these guys, right? They're literally present in every checkout. And if it's basically priced in a way like, like Bajaj has been basically doing, right, which is 0% interest, it's super duper attractive, right? Like as a customer, why wouldn't you take it? And even from a merchant's perspective, right, like it makes total sense to actually offer this because, again, like Pavitra basically mentioned, right, as compared to even a credit card, the checkout experience is just so much smoother, using this as the way to do it rather than even a credit card, right? Even if I have a credit card as an example, this experience is a lot more smoother. And plus, as compared to a credit card, credit card is something I need to basically pay in, 30, 40, whatever days, right? If I don't pay beyond that, essentially they charge me some crazy interest rates, right? With BNPL, especially with 0% stuff, you can actually be able to pay like maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months sometimes at truly 0% interest, right? So a lot of those options are basically being present. And, now because it's become so hot, it's going to literally become, table stakes for, every e-commerce or every merchant, every D2C brand out there, right? Very, very similar to basically what's happened in the US. So once it becomes table stakes, right, and it's present at every checkout, then it's a trend which basically doesn't reverse anytime soon, and it's really going to be a default option going forward as well.
Great, thank you, Mikhil. Harshit, I'd love to hear your views as well, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everybody on the discussion. So basically just sort of echoing most of the points that Mikhil and Pavitra made. So if you think about it, the proposition in general, which is effectively embedded finance when you are at checkout, right, is something that had always existed in the offline world with Bajaj if you wanted to buy a mobile phone, right? So it has always existed, right? But clearly, I think in the context of opening up that market beyond sort of give and take, with everything, if you think about it, zoom back and think about it, Bajaj for being such a large and a valuable business is still only catering to about 20-30 million people, right? And with a big overlap with the credit card market, which is again another 30 million people, right? So I think effectively it's everything coming together now in terms of in the last 2, 3, 4 years, you've got consumers in India who have been consuming content digitally, and that's been happening for some time, right? In the last few years with UPI, etc., you've had consumers now comfortable doing small ticket online financial transactions, small ticket, large ticket, etc. And then of course, COVID has triggered consumers going online for shopping itself, right? So all of that has to come together, right? So consumers' familiarity with and comfort and convenience of shopping online and actually paying for that online. And BNPL is obviously a very, very easy and convenient way for them to sort of, split that payment over a few installments or just defer it and pay it all, in one shot 30 days later. So that's on the consumer side. And on the merchant side, obviously, again, it's the same thing. All the online merchants have been waiting for this moment. With COVID, basically just an acceleration of people coming online and shopping. And then everybody is concerned about customers coming in and merchants not wanting to lose out on that customer for various issues. Customer, thinking twice about making that payment or any other sort of friction point there. And a BNPL player like Zest comes in and then effectively makes it easy for the merchant to sort of convert all of that traffic, right? So it's an absolute no-brainer, right? So it's a coming together of the consumer, the merchant, the environment, which is basically the digital infrastructure that we talked about. And perfect place, perfect time.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Very insightful. So I'll pick on a few things that Sumit said during the introduction. I think Mikhil mentioned it as well. There were some comparisons drawn to the Western markets, some examples given on rounds of funding happening right in the Western markets. So kind of shifting tracks, I guess the direct question is, do you see BNPL in India evolving like it's done, let's say, in the US or in the Western markets? I think that's one. And again, are we now, like a US, maybe moving towards a credit economy? I think that's the second part of the question. And I guess along with that, what makes logical sense is, if so, what demographics do you see adopting BNPL per se, right? Do you only see like Gen Z or millennials, or do you actually see, people on a higher age bracket also kind of getting into the bandwagon from a BNPL perspective? So 2-3 parts to the question. So parallels to the Western market is one. And Harshit, maybe we can go with you first this time since you went last. Second is, are we going towards a credit economy? And third, comment on the demography aspect of it, please, as it evolves.
Yeah, sure. So various markets have various different dynamics and the role that BNPL plays, right? So in just think about it this way, right? In a market like a US or an Australia, where credit card penetration is fairly high, right? US more so than Australia, and you still have valuable companies there. And there the BNPL is obviously solving for problems that Mikhil indicated earlier, which is that credit cards are non-transparent in the fee, the entire onboarding, repayment experience, bunch of these things, right? And hence, all of BNPL comes across as a very clean, honest, transparent, convenient digital proposition, right? In India, you take all of that advantages, right? And then add to that a small point that the market just doesn't have any credit cards, right? So there are only 30 million credit cards, right? So what about the rest? Now, credit card, I mean, just the way that industry has worked, and we've seen that now for a couple of decades. There is a certain pace at which banks would like to grow that instrument, right? But clearly now with so much digital data available and propensity for consumers to come online and spend and being aspirational, and which goes into your other question about the consumer segment, we are seeing demand across sort of, starting from age bracket 20 all the way going up to 35, 40. We do have, we do have people in the 45, 50 as well. But clearly, I think this is a savvy instrument, and the first 20, 30, 50, 100 million customers for BNPL would still what you would call as early adopters, and then it will start sort of keep, the market will keep getting bigger. So clearly today, I think that segment is a bit heavier in that 20 to 40. Someone who's very comfortable online doing various things, and hence, this is another tool or a weapon for them to sort of enhance their overall experience. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of why could it be a valuable business in India, BNPL? Certainly, right? I mean, as I said, there are businesses outside who become really large despite the existence of a credit card. So purely tackling on what's not to be liked about credit card. In India, you take all of that, but really that's like really a small reason. The much bigger reason is that market itself needs to expand significantly faster. We talked about NTC. And basically there is enough of there are enough data points, and there's enough data available for players like us to also sort of expand that market, basically.
Thanks, Harshit. Pavitra, why don't we move to you next? Same question again, geography, demography, and maybe moving to a credit economy. And again, parallels with the Western economy, how do you see BNPL growing?
Yeah, I think that one of the key differences between us and the Western markets is I think we have a far more evolved digital payment infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure I don't mean just by say having access to credit cards, right? Look at our India stack, where how we can authenticate customers, how we can do payments via UPI. So with that, it acts as a paradigm shift because we don't rely as much on, I think we're going to leapfrog beyond the credit card adoption curve, right? Like say from cash to credit cards to some sort of digital payments, we just kind of going to ride on UPI rails, and that becomes a way to enable buy now, pay later on rather than using credit cards. So because of our architecture, it becomes so easier that if I just get an Aadhaar card, I can complete all regulatory compliance to give a credit on the fly to a customer. And because of technology adoption, the cost to enable this customer to get approved is far cheaper, right? Compared to a Western market, because they don't have that architecture. I can't just put in a number and then gather all this information in a centralized manner and make a decision on that, right? So in our case, physical checks are not required, which leads to lower cost of acquisition. The ticket sizes for these buy now, pay later features can be small, right? They can be as little as 1,000 rupees. And the way this product evolves is that you use this product multiple times in a year. It's not like a car loan that I get once in a couple of years, and I pay that off for a few years, right? So, and all of this is only possible again because of the technology curve that we've gone through. A, on the customer level, and B, on just the infrastructure that the government has enabled. So it's a phenomenal thing. So it's different how we will evolve compared to the Western markets. In very different ways we evolve. So going forward, I think because India is going to have access, it's going to be so easily accessible, this credit. The next question that's going to come into play is, are lenders also being responsible in enabling the right credit offering to the customers, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you're an 18-year-old, now you have an Aadhaar card, you get approved, you have a lender who wants to grow the market aggressively, and now you get stuck in this debt trap, right? So what can you do to ensure that the lenders are acting responsibly? Do you have the right cutoff age? giving the right limit to the customer so that, it can lead to a long sustainable market. And as for the demographic, right, like as to what kind of segments are you moving on? I mean, the obvious thing is that you're thinking that this is all for new customers, people who are coming new to the credit system. But like I said, there are people who have credit cards and they still use the buy now, pay later. That's just a function because it is so seamless, right? And just even buy now, pay later, like I have on our platform, we have this same concept as even for 40 and 45-year-olds, right? Because essentially what you're doing, I'll give you an example. When you have a child's education, instead of paying the child's education one shot, you can pay the child's education in installments, right? And no cost, right? Now, what is the demographic of that for that? That's a young professional who's like 40, 45 years old, or anything between 30 and 40, depending on when they got married, obviously, but they're using it. And now you can take that same concept and put it across other, maybe it's insurance premium financing, perhaps it is other things. So it's not simply like purchasing on an e-commerce or a storefront, but it is almost any payment that I can break up into smaller pieces at no cost. So that opens up to a broad demographic. Yes, those are some thoughts on this segment.
Hey, thanks, Pavitra. I do have a follow-up question on that, but I'll hold that. We'll go to Mikhil first, hear his views, and on the same question, I'll ask a follow-up to all three of you. But Mikhil, right now, for you, same question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the US to India point, right, I think, this hammering down the same thing essentially, right? Like essentially there is another option as a credit card, right? India credit card doesn't exist. So, the pathway for BNPL has been, like almost like a pathway of roses, right? Like there's no obstructions, just go out and do it. Obviously India Stack makes this super smooth again, to implement essentially. I think, this combined with the fact that India is such a young economy, right? Like it's not surprising most tech products are used between people which are, between the age group of 20 to 40, because that's the majority of the, population in India. So by default, right, like it's such a young audience and, young population that, we do have a very, very a good appetite for technology products essentially, right? And you combine that with obviously in India traditionally, right, the debt to GDP ratio has been like nothing, right? If you compare that to the US or, China even, right? So fundamentally, when you think about all of these factors, it's not surprising that now basically, people are, using these kind of products because by default, the debt basically in India, right, when it came to loans or when it came to credit cards or whatever was, just from a ratio perspective, significantly lower to most other, countries which are comparable. So we have a long way to go. So I don't think we, at any point in time, I could call ourselves like a, like a credit, country, right? Because there's a long way for us to be there. I think we're at, probably 5-10% of where we can potentially be over the next, decade or so. So it's a long path ahead, but, super exciting either ways.
So, Mikhil, just based on the comments that Pavitra, Harshit, and you made, I'll start with you. So the question based on the insights shared on this question was, so I heard you say pathway for roses. So it's a new credit system, some phrases that I kind of picked up on. There's also another school of thought, especially in the, let's call it the traditional banking system, where I think the credit card departments are actually thinking BNPL is a good thing because it's helping the young generation actually build up credit, right? And it could actually be a funnel or a pipeline for the credit card players to kind of then go and offer it to them. I think that's one. And the other question that came to mind associated with that is, and of course, with competition and with time, the credit card products might also kind of evolve and get more competitive. So quick comment on that, like where do you see that fit in? Like, is it like a BNPL only credit card also grows? Kind of a little bit of views on that would help as well.
I mean, honestly, the thought process is correct, right? Because essentially, a lot of NTC customers can get access to BNPL, right? Because over there, the ticket sizes are just so small and the technology allows that because the cost of doing the transaction is nothing, right? So you can even do a BNPL for like $500 or $1,000, right? And the risk and, associated with that is significantly lower, and combined with basically the cost of enabling that, right, is nothing, right? So basically it does, the top of the funnel for that in terms of customers is just so massive that allows people to basically go ahead and build their credit history. And then, that's just not possible again with the credit card because the cost of issuing appraising a credit card is just significantly larger, and you just can't issue 500 rupee credit cards, right? It's just madness. So, that combined with the fact that it definitely will increase the top of the funnel for not only credit cards, actually any kind of credit products, right? Personal loans, home loans, automobile loans, everything. So it's a great thing for the industry. But I don't think it's in the future is going to be like BNPL versus, credit cards per se, right? Credit cards basically give you like, most credit cards will give you like, a credit-free period or an interest-free period of say 30, 45 days. BNPL can give you that. Like if you can make one purchase like a phone, and it's basically broken up into 6 installments, 3 months, 9 months, how much ever at little to no interest rate, right? That's very, very attractive. And it's a very, very different kind of, product basically, right? Even from a merchant perspective, right? I think what's going to end up happening from a BNPL perspective is it'll just become table stakes, right? If you sell mattresses online, right? And if your competitor is basically enabling somebody to buy a 10,000 rupee mattress, which you sell in 10 installments, and you don't have that facility, and you require the customer to have 10,000 bucks upfront, it's a problem, right? Because a lot of the people will just bounce off your checkout page because they'll be expecting, some kind of credit facility over there. And if you don't have it, I'll go to a competitor who has that ability because I don't have 10,000 bucks to pay right now. I can pay 1,000 bucks, right? So that's a little bit, how you think about that.
Perfect. Thanks, Mikhil. Same question, Harshit, Pavitra. Any different views? Anything to add to what Mikhil just mentioned?
No, I don't think it's, I agree to like Mikhil, right? It's not going to be like a binary outcome that, hey, just because credit cards exist or now that a buy now pay later is coming, that they're going to wipe out each other. Nothing really ever dies. It just kind of evolves. One kind of like draws from the other. And buy now pay later just act as, expanding marketplace, right? They bring more customers into the fold that normally credit cards would not have been able to serve anyways. So they act as a way to be one of the first credit options through this buy now pay later option. The customer gets into this credit behavior. If you behave well, then obviously you have like higher limits, and those higher limits could be personal loans or other credit cards, right? So they act as a stepping stone. In some cases, they expand the market in terms of, although you have a credit card, but you might use the buy now pay later option because it's a no cost EMI option to you, which maybe your credit card won't be able to give. So no, I don't think, I agree that, they're not going to be like a binary outcome. They're just expanding each other's marketplace rather than, eating into them.
Yeah, I'll let me give you a slightly more aggressive view on this one. So if you think about it, and when you talk about credit card, when you talk about BNPL, in terms of credit card, there are two things, right? One is of course the form factor, which is a card, right? And second is just the proposition to the customer, right? Which is that you can use that piece of instrument either for your convenience, 30, 40-day interest-free period, or you can sort of, take longer installment products, whichever way credit cards offer. So, and obviously the other is sort of, a few of them also kind of are attracted to the attractive sort of loyalty reward point system, right? If you think about it, okay, no, let me, now let me define BNPL in its broadest definition, right? BNPL, and especially, someone like ZestMoney, we look at BNPL as straddling everything from a 30, 40-day interest-free period all the way to a 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24-month installment period, right? So it's about saying that, can we become that one instrument that can cater to all the use cases of the customer, right? Yes, right? Second, the form factor today is kind of irrelevant, and UPI has kind of made that irrelevant, and with QRs coming in and even card getting tokenized, etc., not there yet, but will get there, right? So the physical card is sort of irrelevant, and if customers like it, someone can always sort of issue that out, right? So the card per se, the form factor per se is slightly not relevant, right? So the key is that, can a BNPL player play across the segment for the customer? The customer will graduate from a everyday convenience use case to let's say education use case, to a two-wheeler, gradually to a four-wheeler. And a BNPL player doesn't necessarily have to do all of that in-house. They could do some, they could sort of partner with others for some, right? So it's about saying that if we are giving everything to the customer across all kinds of purchase use cases, and if you throw in if you know your customers well and you throw in an interesting loyalty reward system, and which again need not replicate what cards have done historically, right? It could be a whole new thinking, right? Then what is the use? What is sort of the case to move out of that system?
Perfect. Exactly the kind of insights and I guess aggressive thinking, Harshit, as you mentioned, that I was expecting to this question. Thank you very much for sharing that very freely. Just moving on, keeping an eye on the time. There are a couple of other questions. I guess one key question I want to ask the panelists here, and this time, Nikhil, we'll start with you first, then go to Pavitra, and then go to Harshit, right? So let's talk about the role of regulators. We can talk about it from an India standpoint, and I see in the chat window, there's a related question which we can come to in a bit. But for now, how is the segment going to be shaped by the regulators in India? And how is it going to impact growth, the way it's functioning, the business models, the GTMs and things like that?
Yeah, clearly. I mean, obviously from a regulatory perspective, right? I think, there are two broad things which are happening in the BNPL space, right? Obviously, there are a set of companies which are basically offering, BNPL, I would say in an exotic way, right? If I was to, put it politely, essentially, where there are no basically, loan agreements, there's no basically any kind of, reporting to the bureaus and things like that, right? It's, you can call it the khata system or whatever you want to, there are different ways in which people kind of describe it, but they give like a small facility to people and then, essentially customers are free to kind of, pay back or not. And obviously there are, other players who are, adopting a more traditional way of BNPL, which is essentially just taking what Bajaj Finserv was doing offline and just converting that online, right? Where there are, proper loan agreements, there's reporting to the bureaus, and there are these two broad cohorts, right? I think, fundamentally to me, I think, over the short horizon of time, I wouldn't even say long, I think it's going to be essentially only the second path which ends up surviving. I think anybody doing, the first way is, it's basically like, setting up their own, demise, right? I think because, this is essentially like, one news article away or, one really, one very, very strongly worded article away, essentially, right, from their entire user base basically blowing up, right? Because tomorrow if somebody comes out and says that, listen, like, all of this BNPL stuff which is going on in, these few companies, essentially, there's no loan agreement. This isn't basically under the RBI purview. Customers in India are extremely smart. They will basically just be like, I'm not paying, what are you going to do about it? Right. And, from a strictly legal standpoint, there's very little that the opposite company can do about it. Right. And once you're in that situation, as a, if as an official or unofficial lender, you want to call yourself, you will be in, some kind of deep trouble. Right. So I think it's almost like, people who are doing this in a regulated way, I don't think so. BNPL is something, too non-traditional in my opinion, right? It's something honestly, which has been existing since ages. And now people have just obviously found a way to bring it online, which is perfectly legit and, nothing to smoke and mirrors about it, right? It's just basically maybe ticket sizes have gotten smaller, but, I don't think anybody cares about that really, right? The technology is there to make that happen. But I think at the same point in time, if you're doing it, in an unregulated way, I think, forget about the regulator. I think, you yourself are going to be in, trouble if somebody shines a light to it.
Thank you, Nikhil. Pavitra, same question to you.
Yeah, I just feel like from a regulatory standpoint, I think there are a couple of things that the regulator really looks at, right? Like as a lender, do you have the necessary KYC document of any customer that you've ever given a loan to, right? And I think because of the India stack, like I said, if you just enter an Aadhaar card information, you can just capture every piece of information, whether his date of birth, the name, the address, everything can be captured from that one piece of information, and you can on the fly underwrite the customer and then enable like a credit available to them. If the customer chooses to accept that credit need, then obviously he can sign an agreement on the fly itself with an e-sign or an OTP, Aadhaar OTP based verification, right? So now the customer even has a sanction letter, right? So now you want to make sure that you run the right KYC, that you actually have, the customer does have a sanction letter, so he knows what the terms of that engagement are, right? And the third most important thing is that what is the collection capability, right? How are you doing the collections? So which goes back to the question which I was making a comment earlier, that because this product's USP is convenience, right? I mean, we live in an age of instant gratification. Everything wants to be on demand. So now if I make credit available to a large swath of people of population that don't usually have credit available to them, what sort of behavior incentives am I giving them? What sort of credit risk are they taking on, which might lead to, excessive shopping, which means that they cannot go ahead and cannot pay the EMI. So now you start getting collection calls. And what is that collection call mechanism? Do you start does that lead to harassment? And then goes back to like what Nikhil was saying, maybe there is an article that comes out that says that, hey, listen, this set of age of customer set, maybe they're only 18 or 20 years old, they're just straight out of college, they're in a competition to always have the coolest gadgets and the newest things and the greatest and the most fashionable clothes. And they buy all these things, but the collection practices by that fintech are the best in class. And that leads to some event which can kind of blow up really quick, right? So regulators are going to keep an eye on KYC, sanction letter, collection practices, and collection practices is a function of lenders being responsible in targeting the right segment, right? So this thing is a rules of the playground that have already been kind of been set, but some players are more adventurous than others. But I would say that that's how the regulators would look at it. As long as everything's kosher, it should be good. But the moment it kind of blows up and it goes through a huge adoption curve and some challenges come with it, it could lead to some problems.
Harshit, over to you.
Yeah. So yeah, multiple things, right? I mean, think about all the different angles, right? RBI clearly sort of, is always in favor of doing these things correctly, right? KYC, collections practices, all of that. It's not very difficult to do KYC today, and you'll only get better, right? Even collecting repayments, whether that is UPI recurring or everything else, it'll keep getting better, right? So, so I think one side would be that there's probably a small gray arbitrage for a really, really short time. Yeah. So is that worth taking all that risk? That's one point, I guess. The second is from our perspective, as I just mentioned earlier as well, BNPL businesses will become valuable if they can sort of cater to all kinds of use cases for the customer. There's just no point offering a customer a 20-day khata and then what next for that customer, right? I mean, then basically if what do you do with that customer and what does the customer do with you, right? So clearly for us, the customer needs to use Zest Money for all kinds of use cases. So BNPL is clearly lending, right? So there's no ambiguity.
Perfect. I think on the time we have just 3 minutes left. So one final question, we'll keep it light. And I think there are a couple of points Pavitra made I'll pick up on. So you spoke about responsible lending a couple of times. You also spoke about behavior incentives, right? Now, different parts of the market kind of think of BNPL as, some of them think of it as a very convenient way of making payments. And then there are the purists who would think of it as a credit product. So a quick round with the panelists, anyone who wants to go first, where would you kind of categorize that from a point of view of responsibly growing it in the market?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer, right? It starts off as a convenient payment service, but it is a credit product. It needs to be paid back. That means that you need to be able to underwrite the customer. You need to have the right customer segment that you're going after, and you need the right collection practices. And that all that is possible, right? With, like Harshit was mentioning, like, you can send payment gateway links. You can, make these are really small loans. So you don't need any physical presence. You built out that infrastructure. But in my mind, it is a credit product. You need to be able to collect that. Only then does it make sense for your company, right? Or else it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. No, none of this is contradictory at all, right? It's a convenient instrument for the customer, but at the same time, it's a credit instrument. And I think it's actually a win-win proposition for the customer and the lender, right? Because with this equation, with this sort of baseline understanding clear, you want to grow that relationship, right, in value. right? Which means we want to make sure that we are underwriting correctly, we are collecting correctly, the overall end-to-end experience is superb to be able to retain that customer.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on, I would just, I would just add one more player in the equation to Harshit. I think it's great for the merchant as well. Absolutely. Right, along with the lender and the customer, and fundamentally, like, even though it's super convenient and everything like that, right, the rules of every single loan apply to BNPL also, right? Like all the fair practice code stuff, the customer has to pay back, everything is just the same. It's just the form factor of a loan which is being, slightly tweaked across, right? That's really it.
Yeah, absolutely right. For a merchant, a BNPL is a powerful sales enabler, right?
Yeah.
That's it, right? So that's where the value comes, and that's where you see all these 6 months, 9 months, 0% being borne by the merchants.
Perfect. Pavitra, Harshit, Nikhil, this certainly has been extremely insightful for me. I'm sure it has been for the rest of the audience. Sumit, I see questions on the chat window. Do you want me to read them out? Will you read them out, and then we can open them up to the panelists?
Yeah, absolutely. You can take it ahead. There are a lot of interesting questions on the chat box.
All right. So Shreyas is asking, what are the panel's views on impact of LazyPay's UPI-backed QR-based BNPL?
Harshit, I think.
Yeah. I was just saying, yeah, if anyone else is taking it. Yeah. No, look, I mean, this is the technology innovation in the country, right? We can use UPI as a railroad, right? And from a handshake point of view, a QR works perfectly well, right? So, the railroads can be many, right? Right? You can basically just, you don't have to go over UPI. You could go over UPI. There could be something else that can come up. So all of that is form factor. Something like this will just sort of make it universally, will make universal acceptance easy from a acceptance point of view. But yeah, beyond that, I guess it's all about everything that we spoke about earlier, right? It's how do you sort of acquire that customer? How do you sort of grow that relationship? Do you have sort of all the right pillars in place to be able to do that? And yeah, those are all the sort of the important facets of the business.
Okay. I'll quickly move. There are a bunch of questions in the in the chat window. So please feel free to jump in, whoever wants to answer first, please. So the next question is from Timana. The question is, in BNPL, do we look at credit leverage like we do for personal loans or credit card limits for decision?
Yeah, I think, I mean, just to jump in on this one, right? I think, like, again, this is really lender specific, right? Everybody has their own way of underwriting customers. You may choose to, look at leverage, when it comes to, like, say, maybe a little bit of a bigger ticket sizes, like maybe it's 30,000-40,000 rupees. If you're looking to split up and the EMIs are large enough, you may want to look at leverage. But if it's just, like a 500 rupee loan, sometimes people may not even look at leverage, right? But this is a very generic question per se, and it would depend on every single fintech, every single NBFC, and obviously the product and the ticket sizes that they're looking after.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil. So we'll move on to the next one. Miguel is asking, how do you plan to tackle compliance for BNPL, not only in India, but also across the world in different geographies?
So I think compliance, like we spoke earlier itself, compliance is a function of what the regulation prescribes in terms of the KYC document. Does the customer is aware of the sanction letter? What are the collection practices? Is the customer aware of, like, how is he supposed to make that repayment? So that's a very clearly articulated framework by the RBI, right? So there's no like gray area in that one. I think and players are fairly evolved when it comes to this sort of making sure that the compliance is there with the India stack. You can verify documents, PAN card, Aadhaar card. So I think I don't think that's like a major risk, unless these sounds, not for the lack of the environment or the architecture, but seems more like it would be like a willful thing to miss out on compliance.
Great. The next question is on risks of over-lending. I think Pavitra spoke about that at different points from a point of view of responsible lending and the risk associated with that. So we'll move on. There is a question from Sumit. It says, a question from the BNPL lender's perspective. Does the panel think there is an imbalance of power in the BNPL ecosystem where the merchant controls the product economics by limiting the number of BNPL options or reducing the commission stroke yield to lender while the lender takes the regulatory and credit risk for ever decreasing margins?
Yeah, I can take that. Not really, actually, right? Not really, right? So the merchants clearly sort of understand the value of this, right? Right. That so obviously, you know, if what the merchants are clearly looking for is that if I've got a top of the funnel traffic, how do I convert it then and there, right? So I'm not, so obviously, you know, some traffic automatically converts by making debit payments or if you have credit cards already, but for the rest, they need to do something, right? So they clearly understand this. They are willing to pay for this. Obviously, you know, if you cut to, you know, 12 months later, and if there are 20 players, 20 BNPL players, then certainly the merchants will have to make a choice as to, you know, who's providing more value, right? So, the value goes two ways, right? We bringing customers to the merchants and of course, we helping the merchants convert their own traffic, and all of these things sort of decide, you know, that power equation.
Thanks, Harshit. We'll, again, a bunch of questions, so we'll move. Okay, so someone's asking, do you think, this is Yash, sorry. So do you think solving for a particular use case or a loan segment first would work in this market? Or moving in together with multiple use cases is the way to survive and thrive?
I think Harshit, you should say by experience. What do you think?
I mean, we've cracked it at ZestMoney by going after multiple use cases, and it's actually come off pretty well, right? So, and when we say use cases, it is as varied as, you know, small ticket fashion, consumer electronics, 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, as big as someone taking sort of an education loan for 100,000, 200,000 rupees, and, you know, and everything in the middle, offline, online, right? So it's about, you know, straddling all the use cases. You look, I mean, on paper, you could do all of this, right? But you need to execute it properly, right? So that's the key. And yeah, it's worked out well for us.
Thank you, Harshit. Thank you. We'll go to this question which says, what have been some of the most effective low-cost collection techniques for digital unsecured loans?
I think that, again, like I think WhatsApp reminders and text messages with payment gateway links embedded into them, you know, or IVR calling is phenomenal, right? Like you don't need to do any physical checks, or you don't need another person on the other line trying to talk to you itself. Like you can just send text messages, WhatsApps with payment gateway links, and it costs literally nothing to collect that. And that collection could be for as little as 500 rupees to a few thousand to a lakh, right? You can enable that across different payment amounts, but the cost is negligible. So I think technology goes a long way. There are platforms like Credgenics that enable that are in-house capabilities too, right? That I'm sure ZestMoney has something in-house itself, but there are platforms out there like Credmeg, Credgenics that enables digital collections.
Great. We missed a question in between. So the other question is, what is the delinquency rate in BNPL vis-a-vis to credit cards?
And I think this is such a broad question. it's basically like asking, you know, what are the delinquencies in personal loans, right? Like ICICI would have something, HDFC would have something, you know. So it's so different, right? Essentially, like I think, you know, you can't categorize every single lender in the same bucket. It totally depends on, you know, what's the risk appetite, what's the collection capability of every single lender, right? You know, so it's two very different kind of you know, things to basically answer.
Okay, I think we have just one more question. And to the audience here, if there are more, I think we have 7 minutes left after this, please feel free to put it in the chat window. There's a question I had missed earlier, which says, do you think BNPL up to 12 months should stay out of credit bureau reporting?
Absolutely not.
I mean, credit cards don't, right? So why would BNPL?
Yeah.
So I think those are the questions in the chat window. If anybody in the audience, I don't know, Sumit, if there's an option for the audience to come live and kind of ask questions if they want to. We've covered everything in the chat.
Absolutely. We more briefly covered almost all the questions on the chat window. And if any audience has any specific questions, either they can put on the chat window or unmute themselves and ask. And in the meantime, I think I would like to pose an interesting question from a consumer standpoint. That as a consumer standpoint, there are so many lending options when I'm like trying to purchase XYZ amount of like goods. What should be the best advice at a consumer level in terms of what sort of a credit option should one even try to select, and how do you select one which is like more effective to make a better consumer decision?
Yeah.
Any of the panelists can please feel free to jump in, and like that could be a that this set of question might give a good understanding and from a consumer standpoint. How do you select a better credit option?
So
Sure,
while the
sure.
panelists think about it, I've been asking questions. I have a very simple answer to that, and I think a basic principle, right? It would be a credit product you understand, right? And that is where I think some of the responses that I got during the panel discussion kind of made a lot of sense. I mean, what I heard was convenience, ease of use, seamless. Some of these adjectives that were being used, right? So I think simple guidance would be something you understand clearly, and then of course, if you understand the credit product well, you can compare it to others, right? And then make a informed decision. So I think it's very basic in that. But Harshit, sorry, you were starting and I kind of started speaking in between. Please.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of what you said, right? It is depending on the use case. You sort of need to understand what sort of the lender is offering. By the way, I think in a lot of cases you might think that there are a lot of options, but once you go through the process, a lot of people might actually not underwrite you, right? So that is the other thing, right? But yeah, but if assuming that the lender would also want you, then obviously from the customer's point of view, it's transparency in the offering, convenience of that transaction, but also the utility of associating with that brand, right? That is important, right? Is this a one-off relationship, or have I seen this brand anywhere else, everywhere else, right?
Right. That's an interesting question. And with that, I think I will just take a last question, which I came on the chat window. That is, what is the opinion about digital lending prospects in emerging economies, including Bangladesh?
Yeah, I think honestly, just to answer that question, I would say that any country, right, which basically has a very very large audience base which doesn't have access to formal credit, right? I think honestly the only option there is basically digital financial services, right? Not only actually lending. That's realistically the only option, right? And if you're in those countries, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to go out and build infrastructure. Or build companies which basically do provide financial services to people who are underbanked and don't have access to financial basically formal financial services, right? So yeah, actually this basically applies to any country with this kind of underpenetration.
Right. And Piyush asks an interesting question that when we notice credit cards, there is a lot of incentives to the users, including credit card points, brand vouchers, and loyalty points, etc. And what sort of do we see a similar phenomena which will definitely come up in buy now pay later space as well, or that's something still far away?
Yes, that will happen at some level. That's already happening in various different ways. But if you sort of stick to the proposition that we've seen historically with credit cards, which is just simple loyalty, brand points, etc., I think those would also come in. There's just no reason sort of to not do that. It's all effectively rewarding good loyal customers. So yeah, should, like, there's no reason why it will not happen.
Right. That's an interesting space. And I guess I'll take one final question. That is, Harith asks that calculating the ability to pay has become relatively straightforward. So how you are able to predict a customer's willingness to pay? And that's quite an interesting question, because anytime a credit underwriting decision always happens on two pieces: willingness to pay as well as ability to pay. So when it comes to recent digital lending phenomena, how is that? How do we able to predict the customer's willingness to pay?
I think really it's a combination of two things, right? Like obviously, easiest thing to do is if it's not an NTC customer, you can obviously easily just see that person's past history, right? If you cannot, there's a lot of digital data available about this user, which is not necessarily about essentially loans, right? It could be just his general habits which you can digitally trace, and on the basis of that, right, it could be like how many missed calls does that person have, does that person respond back to text messages, basically you can understand that person's financial habits, right, by understanding what apps they have installed on their phone. So a lot of those things are obviously present, but actually just to answer the question in very short, what usually people end up doing in this case, right, is they just start with a very, very small ticket size, right, in these cases, and allow the user to basically build trust between each other, right? Because initially it starts from a place of like you said, willingness to pay is basically what's the trust score of this individual, right? And if you don't have a trust score for that individual, basically the lender will put a leaf forward, and it'll probably be like a very, very small ticket size, allow them to cycle up by demonstrating good habits and a good repayment basically track record. And that's how people are basically able to offer them larger and larger ticket sizes with good amount of credit.
Great. Thanks, Mikhail, for your views on that. And with that, I would like to conclude the whole today's session, and would not like overspill with our time commitments. And I would like to thank all our panelists, Pavitra, Harshit, Mikhail, Argya as well. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was quite an amazing session today, and we had a lot of varying views around this topic. And absolutely, we will definitely be coming up with a lot other conversations as well within the whole larger fintech domain at Fintech OI. So if any one of you are still not yet or want to stay connected with the whole upcoming sessions, do just register on our Luma page. Another thing is we have a demo day coming up, that is next Tuesday. We have at least 6 to 8 emerging fintechs pitching in to the audience. So do join us for that as well. With that, I would like to thank everyone, and thank you so much to our partners, sponsors as well, that is Open, Perfios, and Sciencey for supporting us at Fintech OI. And thank you so much, everyone. I would like to conclude this today's session. Thanks, Pavitra. Thanks, Mikhail. Thanks, Arshit. Thanks, Arya.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See you.
Take care, guys.
See you.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.